Angkor Wat. It may be the most beautiful religious monument ever built, and the most mystifying. Completed in 1145, the crown jewel of the Khmer Empire was inexplicably deserted 2 centuries later. The remote location and the relentless Cambodian jungle hid all the region's temples for over 400 years. They were the stuff of legend until 1860, when a French naturalist named Henri Mouot came upon them by accident. When his report hit Paris, these temples became all the rage across Europe, with people talking wildly about a new lost world. I imagine this is what it must have been like when Henri Mouot stumbled upon Angkor Wat. The jungle had reclaimed the stone temple. As you can see, the tree just digs its roots into any openings it can find and grasps onto the stone, creating a silent but deadly slow-motion wrestling match. And given time, the tree always wins and destroys its host. It's brutal, yet beautiful. Mouot and other early European explorers didn't believe that ancestors of the natives they met could have constructed these fantastic temples. They credited an unknown race of master builders, but they couldn't have been more wrong. To get a better sense of all the Khmer's accomplishments, I'm meeting up with Damien Evans, the deputy director of something called the Gap. Damien!
Hunter, how's it going?
Hey, good. How you doing?
Good, mate. Come on up the stairs, this way.
GAP stands for the Greater Angkor Project, where archaeologists use sophisticated aerial imaging techniques to peer deeply into Cambodia's past.
So this here's the very first radar image of Angkor, taken by NASA from a space shuttle in 1994.
So I'm guessing that right here is the temple complex, right?
That's right. Actually, that little square in the middle there is Angkor Wat. So you can see it shows us for the first time that Angkor was absolutely huge.
Next, Damien shows me a new image created by AIRSAR, which stands for Airborne Synthetic Aperture Radar. Its longer wavelengths penetrate the forest canopy to expose much more than meets the eye.
It shows us that Angkor was more than just a collection of temples. It shows us that it was a vast inhabited landscape which sprawled over more than 1,000 square kilometers of this area.
What is this reservoir right here?
That one there is the West Barai. It's a reservoir that's 8 kilometers long, 2 kilometers wide, designed to trap water coming down from the north during the dry season and distribute it throughout the south. This can be quite
This map reveals a remarkable new discovery, an extensive system of waterworks hidden for centuries in the Cambodian landscape.
So in this map you can see much more clearly the detail and the sophistication of the water management system. You see dozens and dozens of canals. In fact, you can trace the flow of the water through this network from this area here through this very complex system in the middle and then dispersed throughout Angkor to the south.
This is great because down on the ground you'd have no idea that any of this exists.
Yeah, look, even archaeologists have trouble making sense of this landscape from the ground. What you really need to do is get up in the air and have a look at things from an aerial perspective.
Sounds like a great time for a little airborne reconnaissance. Damien and his colleagues have recently released a major new study. Turns out, Angkor Wat was just a small part of the largest settlement in the pre-industrial world. And arguably, the Khmer's greatest achievement was not their temples, but what they could do with water.
So what we can see down here is the West Barai. This is the largest reservoir in the Khmer Empire. It holds about 50 million cubic meters of water. Absolutely massive.
How was this created? Did they dam up a certain part of it, or was this all hand dug?
A little bit of both, actually. The downslope side was probably a dam originally, and then they formalized it into making it a huge rectangular reservoir by mounding up earth all along the sides of it.
So this was pure hard labor right here.
Absolutely. Just like any task on the landscape here, it's completely flat, so anytime you see something like this, it means that they've just poured thousands and thousands of people into remodeling the landscape in that area.
I mean, when you think about 16 square kilometers of a reservoir in the 12th century, that's a huge engineering feat.
The engineering here is unparalleled. You don't see it really anywhere else in the pre-industrial world on this kind of scale.
Turning north, we fly over ancient rice paddies whose boundaries were set 1,000 years ago.
What we can see crisscrossing the landscape here is an incredible system of water management that really doesn't exist anywhere else in the ancient world on this kind of scale.
Is that what this is right here in front of me?
Right. This is actually the main feeder line of water from the headwaters where the rain falls in the Kulan Mountains to the north and transporting it right down into the central temple district. You know, archaeologists have always known about these huge temples. For at least 100, 150 years they've been well studied. What we've been able to do using remote sensing and using this NASA radar imagery is to really come to terms with the scale and the complexity of this water management system.
With Damien's help, I now see the landscape is full of clues to the past. It's amazing to consider the skills of these ancient Angkorians. When I first saw the Temple of Angkor Wat, I was blown away. But I literally thought that that was all there is. But now I realize, after being up here in the air, that it's part of a greater civilization that goes on and on as far as the eye can see. It truly is very impressive. From the Kulan Mountains to the temples and rice fields below, this intricate scheme of 1,100 square miles of irrigation and reservoirs gave the Khmer year-round harvests. It made it possible to feed a population of up to 1 million people and brought its rulers vast wealth. From this perspective, we can clearly see how they mastered their environment and even catch a glimpse of a temple still shrouded in jungle foliage. And how many people have ever been to this temple, you think?
Maybe half a dozen people, I think, would have been to this temple on the ground.
And this area is littered with things like this.
This is one of several hundred temples like this. So right now we're heading up to the north of Angkor towards the Kulan Mountains, which is the source of the water for the Siem Reap River, which feeds the central temple zone. What you're going to see up here is pretty impressive.
Our pilot goes in for a close-up before landing us on top of the mountain. Damien takes me to a sacred part of the river. Wow, look at this. Looks like they've actually carved out the stone of the riverbed here.
That's right, yeah. In fact, all of this area here is carved out underneath the water.
What are these symbols?
Well, the central object there is called a lingam. It's a phallic symbol, a symbol of male fertile power. The enclosure around that is called a yoni, which is a representation of female fertile power.
Is this meant to give some sort of symbolic power to the water here?
That's right. As the water flows over the top, it's imbued with this kind of ritual fertility. Then it flows down from the Kulan out into the rice fields at Angkor down below and sort of delivers that fertile power to the rice fields.
Damien tells me that these symbols would have been carved during the dry season, when the riverbed is exposed. There are hundreds of these carvings engraved here. So, in a sense, they're blessing the source of the water that feeds their empire.
That's exactly right.
If I were to climb in and touch the stone or drink from the water, would that give me strength and fertility?
Look, I don't know about that, but I'm pretty sure it would make you very sick, so you'd need all the help that you could get, I reckon.
Now that I understand the spiritual importance of the water here, I want to get another look at that spectacular waterfall.
These are just the smaller ones up here. It goes down, and like the bigger ones are down there.
These are the headwaters of the Siem Reap River. It's called the Ganges of Cambodia, and now I know why. Like the holy river in India, people come here to be renewed in both body and soul. It's not hard to believe it's a little bit of heaven. Woo! It is so forceful underneath that waterfall, but you can't appreciate it until you're actually standing right under it. And this is the exact same power that fueled the Khmer Empire. It's absolutely amazing. Damien and I leave the mountain as we arrive by helicopter. Driving back into town, he explains how water and rice were the keys to the Khmer success. Would they have used the canals for agriculture?
Traditionally, people have denied that that's the case, but increasingly what our mapping work and what our excavations are showing is that these canals were very tightly integrated into the rice agriculture system here at Angkor.
Well, you would have needed a big army to build an empire that was that huge, and rice would be a cheap way to feed them.
That's absolutely right. You know, if you manage water very effectively, you can also create huge surpluses and convert that directly into empire building.
For centuries, The Khmer managed their water effectively, allowing them to feed their vast population and consolidate their power.